So just a little bit about myself and my background and how I got into product management. I started my career actually as a salesperson. And in sales, there's an expression called carrying a bag. And the bag is a metaphor for your quota. So you don't get paid unless you sell a certain amount of deals or reach a certain volume of revenue, whatever the metric is. And so when 50% or more of your compensation is tied to delivering such a tangible result, you suddenly find a passion for what's important to you about your product, because you're not closing the deal because the product's missing this feature or the usability sucks, and when you give a demo it's embarrassing to show, and so you get really emotionally tied because literally your compensation is tied. Now on the flip side, on the product side or the non-business side, I mean, how many people here have ever heard of a product manager or an engineer or developer having what's called a variable compensation, paid based on commission? No, it doesn't. It's not an accepted practice, right? So I would get frustrated as a salesperson, and I wasn't just a salesperson. I was a sales manager, and I was good at what I was doing. I was successful, and I was able to experience being part of and a key contributor to a $0 revenue to double-digit, $20 million revenue growth in a short period of time, building a team. And so in this role, I needed my sales team to be successful. Otherwise, I wasn't going to get paid. Plus, I wanted them to succeed and be happy. So I would go straight to the developer. If Steve were a developer, I'd go right up to him and I'd say, "Hey, man, this feature, customers, prospects keep telling us it's so important. How come it's not prioritized?" And then one day, someone came up to me and said, "You can't come back here anymore. Get lost," right? And that wasn't going to fly with me, because again, like their compensation. So interestingly enough, at this moment in time in the life of this particular company where I was, they transitioned from what's called waterfall to agile Scrum Framework. And so if you're not familiar with any term I mentioned, just raise your hand, ask. There's no assumptions here. Yes?
What is this waterfall?
Sure. Okay. So if you're building an airplane and you're Boeing, right? The airplane has to fly safely. It has some very hard requirements. And so those requirements all have to be defined up front. You can't, there are federal regulations, so typically a product like something like an airplane you're manufacturing follows what's called, it's considered like the traditional method, but forget those labels. Waterfall is the right methodology for certain types of products, and it's the wrong methodology for other types of products. So when you know exactly what the outcome needs to be, this projector needs to be able to do all these things, and you want to get it within that price point, whatever, you define all those requirements up front, and you have a project timeline. You basically project manage your way through it. That's more or less waterfall. Okay. Whereas agile, when you do, there's a graph actually, that you can find out there. 5 times later, I can show you of complexity over time, all that stuff, and so highly complex in environments like software in particular, where there's a lot of change. You're not, you think you want the software to do this, you think customers want that and will pay for that, but until you put it out there, you're not sure, and so you're going to put something out there and you're going to iterate on it, and that's much more conducive to an agile Scrum type of framework. Great question. So I'll be real quick with this story. we'll keep the slide going here. Oh, well, it's the picture. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. What the Agile Scrum Framework did for me was it removed that barrier from get out of here to now, hey, you're a chicken. I'm a chicken now, and I get to show up to these meetings. And what's a chicken? Well, a chicken basically gets to bark, gets to make noise. So I get to come to certain meetings in the process and share my point of view. And I thought this was freaking awesome. Wow, it's about time that we formalize this, and I get my say. And the other guys, and gals, the engineers and the product managers, they were called pigs. And pigs because they literally have skin in the game, right? It's like it's their bacon. Like if there's a bug in the product, it's because they messed up, something happened that they shouldn't have, or if there's a problem with the release or whatever. So you have all these animal names, what have you. But the point is that this opened up my eyes to, wow, here's finally the opportunity to bridge the gap that I experienced, the gap between the needs and desires of the business side of the house and the realities that the development engineering side had to deal with. And to me, that is, to me personally, that is product management. And if I were someone that were purely driven by just money, I probably would have stuck with sales. But to me personally, what was important, what I'm passionate about, is delivering great products to customers that benefit them. So when I experience that, it's so satisfying, right? So that's what got me into product management. And had there been a product school back then, I mean, wow, that would have been terrific, but there wasn't. So your path to product management is always going to be different. I think mine's quite unique because in my experience, I've seen mostly software engineers transition, QA engineers, UX designer, people who tend to come more from the technical side of things, or someone used to has a PMP, they're certified project manager, and everyone's changing to this Scrum Agile thing, so now they're product man. So with that, shine the light on you guys. Just quickly go around. You could say your name and what you do today, and what if you're in product management or if you're in development. I'm just curious so we'll start. And so these are the typical activities in the Scrum framework. So you have a sprint, right? Where a sprint is either a 2-week or 4-week period by the rule, by the letter of the manifesto. There's an Agile manifesto out there. You should read it. It's interesting. So you have to plan for those 2 weeks. What the heck are we going to do in those 2 weeks? Every day you meet up in what is probably the most well-known activity and least understood, the daily Scrum. Okay, and then towards the end or at the end of your 2 weeks, you're going to demonstrate the work that the team did to the stakeholders and field questions. Okay, then the team is going to get together and talk about, hey, how did that go? What can we do better next time? Let's fix this, let's fix that, okay? How many of you here have played organized sports? Raise your hands. Organized sports. How many of you here have been part of a team? Okay, and outside, okay, so just follow me with the analogy. I tend to lean on the sports analogy, but for non-sports people, I understand it's maybe not quite as effective, but the point is that this is a group effort. Just like this conversation here is, for me to feel like I had an impact tonight, I'm gonna ask to hear your voices too, right? It's a team thing here. So the last thing I've highlighted is what my talk is focused on. When I walked in, Steve asked me how'd you decide to come do this? Well, I've been to a few speaker sessions that product school has put on, and they're all excellent. The ones that I've attended tend to just kind of like, this is my experience and my view of what a product manager does, and I'm here to help. And I thought it'd be cool to like get a little bit into the weeds. So that's why I'm going to drill down into this backlog refinement. So to do that, I'm going to tie in the. I titled the talk, "You Are Your Backlog." It's like you are what you eat. You know that expression? Okay. So, how's the sausage made, or who makes the sausage, really, so to speak? I don't eat sausage personally, but you get the analogy. So this comes straight out of Scrum.org slide from their site, and you can look at it. But here's a laundry list of things. If it helps, let's come up with a product. Let's just say, hey, we're the team here, and we're coming up with a travel app, that takes you to destinations where there's no airport, off the beaten path. Okay, I just pulled that one out, right? So, we have to have, okay, these are all the things that we'd like to see in our product, So we have to plan that. This is the sprint backlog. This is the work that we're going to get done in this 2-week time frame. The team works on it. They talk about it every day. At the end, they demonstrate their work, and then they deliver what's called an increment. They actually deliver and release. So that, not to get too deep into the woods, but that could likely mean that users are actually going to log on and see something new or different, or something's changed, in the user experience, or something's changed on the back end, or the increment can be lots of different things. So when we're talking about you are your backlog, we're talking about a specific role, which is the product owner, that owns, what does a product owner own? They own the product backlog. Okay, so to be clear, this product backlog is in order of priority. And the items in here are discussed with the team, presented to the team to refine. Okay? So just what I'm trying to say here is that your future success as a product owner depends on how well you manage that rectangle right there. And I'm going to ask the question: this is your bag, so to speak. If you were in sales, like that's your, how well you manage that will define how successful you are. And we'll answer the question why at the very end, but think about it as we're going through this. The team is the software engineers, QA, technical team here. So the upshot here is that the job of the product owner is to maximize the value of the product by prioritizing managing a backlog, so that the team, and when I say team, the development team is working on the right stuff. Now, I paused there, dramatic pause for emphasis, because it's a hint into the answer to the overall question that I'm trying to answer here: is why is the product backlog and how you manage it so important? Okay? You want to make sure, I'm not saying this is the answer, but it is your obligation as the product owner, product manager, whatever title has been bestowed upon you, to make sure the team is working on the right stuff. If at the review, stakeholder raises their hand and says, I thought the CEO said that, y'all were going to deliver the new search functionality. You're the one nectaring. And to be successful at product management, and I've been in this situation, it's not easy. You have to stand up and basically say, I know what the CEO wanted, but guess what? Do you know how much time and how much money it's going to cost to implement that search feature that he wants? And if you want, we can talk after this meeting about why that wasn't prioritized, but I determine the priorities here. Now, that's the the gangster way of expressing yourself, but you have to be a little bit more politically correct. But basically say, yes, we looked at that, and given the resources and level of investment, we had to make a difficult decision, and we went with this with this feature set. And you have to basically stand behind your decision to deliver it. Right stuff. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about backlog refinement. So there are lots of different concepts and tools of how you refine a backlog, right? So let's go with this search feature example. So the other point I want to emphasize here is that this interaction between, let's say, me as the product owner and you guys as the team, it has to be structured. Sadly, I mean, if anyone's been part of a development team, it's kind of like this. It's like, again, the sports analogy. You're on a team, and like I would help coach my daughter's basketball teams, right? And we'd run a very simple play. You pass it here, this one moves there, you go here, okay? We teach them the play, but we don't practice it. We don't try it. We don't see where it breaks down and where they don't understand the play and where we need to spend some time. So that's what would happen if you didn't do any refinement. You'd be unproductive. You're not only you're not being productive, but you're being counterproductive. So the point here is that the time has to be, refinement has to be a structured activity. In my personal experience, we did it twice a week for an hour. So that's 4 hours out of the 2 week. So about 10%. That's good. It really as often as you need to, right? Keeping in mind that you have a capacity, and your Scrum Master really should be helping you with the team with the capacity and how that all adjusts. But as the team starts to work better and better together, you achieve what some people call flow. Flow is like you're in the Matrix, man. You're like, whoosh, whoosh. You're catching bullets, throwing them down, and you're dodging them, and you're, beating the bad guys and getting the love from all the people, and you're just rocking and rolling. Nothing can stop you. It's really hard to achieve. It's really hard to achieve that, especially at large companies. But that should always be your goal. It's like when they say players in the zone. They'll hit every shot. They'll throw it up like this, and it'll go in. They're just in the zone. So refinement. So again, here are some tangible tools and tips. Now, I have a guru. His name's Robert or Bob Galen. Some people say Jalen, Galen. I have a link to his blog out here. And a lot of this comes straight from Bob. And I worked with Bob at that company that I was telling you about, that transition from waterfall to agile. So he's another big reason why I went into product management. So a lot of the stuff I get from him, and I can share it with you too. But the meetings again have to be regularly scheduled, at least 10% of the time. rigorous prioritization. I mean, you can't be iffy about why this thing is number 1 and this thing's number 2, let alone why this thing is number 2 and that thing's number 10. Okay? As a product, it's empowering. It's a great feeling to know, but you're going to make a lot of tough decisions along the way. Examine your stories frequently. So this whole process is, when you're dealing with certain personality types and professional backgrounds and academic backgrounds and technical backgrounds, it can be very hard to come to terms with the fact that this is a living, moving thing, right? This isn't a step-by-step process. Things are constantly changing. One thing you can count on is that things will change. But to answer the question, at what point, if I understood you correctly, does the refinement take place such that it doesn't, new requirements or new don't come in and disrupt the whole process? So it has to happen here and not here. Basically, you have to be ahead of the game. All right, and I'm glad you asked this question because I struggled with this as a product manager. An edict came down that we had to have 3 to 4 sprints worth of backlog refined and ready to go at any given moment. Right? How's that going to happen? Kidding me? We're doing a database upgrade, and we've got this new search feature that we're implementing, and a vendor just told us that they're making a big change to their stuff, and we're gonna have to be ready for that. Like, I don't have time to groom. The team doesn't have time for that. What? Okay, so you are your backlog. So it has to happen here. That should be your goal really should be to have minimum 3 sprints worth of refined backlog. So you're talking about stuff in your refinement that the team's not yet working on. And that could be really hard for the team. Really, really hard for the team. Because right now their head is focused on this search thing that we're doing. And now you want to talk about voice, natural language integrate, well, we have to, because what's going to happen when the time comes that we have to actually deliver on that? We have limited capacity. The product backlog is ordered by product owner, okay? Product backlog is ordered by the product owner and is what throughout the sprint. You can refine the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master's sole role is like a referee, like they're wearing black and white stripes. The Scrum Master's role is to make sure that the team, including the product owner, are following the ceremonies, are, they're there as almost like a coach / referee. But they really have no say. They should have no say. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen in the real world, where you have overzealous Scrum Masters or confusion about roles. But it's the team that sets the sprint goal. And then the reason I came to this, because the question was about level of effort. Okay, so who should really be determining the level of effort? Yeah, the team. The team should, and not the product owner, and not the Scrum Master, and not anybody else. So, the job of the product owner can be to question why the team thinks the level of effort is, let's say, a 10 out of 10 instead of a 2 out of 10, or whatever method you're using. It is, you've heard of poker and Fibonacci and this, that, and the other. There are so many different, tools to maybe let's just say 1 out of 10 or oh, I like small, medium, large, extra large, right? So if I think it's a small, but they're saying large, as a product owner, I should absolutely ask them to explain to me why they think it, why it's that way. Maybe I'm not understanding some level of complexity in that. So the answer to the question you asked is, it's the team needs the information from the refinement meetings to be able to forecast the level of effort it's going to take to actually do the thing, so that then you can get into sprint planning. Okay, never cancel the refinement meeting, and create a theme, or create themes or goals. It just helps the team wrap their heads around, okay, this is this, now we're talking about the search thing, now we're talking about the natural language thing, now we're talking about the global API integration thing. The point I'm trying to emphasize here is that nothing happens without collaboration, right? As the product owner, your role is no more or no less important than any other individual member of the team, but it's like the weakest link in the chain kind of thing. Like we're all tied together here, right? If there's just one person on the team that just isn't bought in, or just doesn't get it, or is confused, or whatever, that's going to affect productivity and effectiveness, and your ability to reach that flow, that state of flow. Okay, so the team will decide when the refinement is done, like when they have enough. But you can, to your question earlier, you can visit items in the backlog at any time if there are questions. So in my own personal experience, so product school like to bring speakers in to share their own personal experiences. I had a development team I was working with, and they happened to be overseas, right? And so it just added a layer of complexity. It was just another challenge in trying to convey, this is what I'm talking about. This is what we need. The search needs to be able to do this, that, and the other. They would bomb me with questions, right? And at first, like, whoa, man, Once you start to learn as a product owner how your team likes to consume information, that's really important, is to figure out, okay, some teams want you to draw a picture. Some teams tell you, I've had people tell me, don't you dare draw me a picture. If you draw me a picture, I'm going to crumple it up and throw it away. Just tell me what the requirements are, right? So every team has a different way. The key here is that these are called frameworks for a reason. They're not blueprints. They're frameworks because you have to be flexible. You have to be, everything is fluid. The interpersonal dynamics of it all comes into play. And that's, again, one of the reasons why being a product manager, product owner, whatever you want to call it, is so difficult. Because you could stand there all day long and say, but this is the priority. I say so. Figure it out. Do it. Like it's not going to do you any good, right? Because when a customer calls in and says, "You've been telling me about this new search feature. It's worse than the product's worse than what it was before." It's the product owner's neck, and then the team's, then the product owner's going to come to the team and say, where was this breakdown? Like what went wrong here? So the idea of like how refined is however much detail the team needs to say, we got it. And I swear to you, there are times when I would say, oh, dang, they're going to ask me for so much information. And to my surprise, the team was like, we're good, we got this. There are other times when you think it's like the most straightforward thing, and they ask you a gazillion million minute questions, you got to sit there and answer every single one, because as well as you think you explained it to them, if they still have questions, you didn't explain it to them. They've either stopped asking you questions or they don't have any questions. How do you know that they actually understand what the story is, what the requirements are, so on and so forth? Experience. Okay, so your level of experience. If let's say this is a team that you're just starting to work together, and they don't ask you enough questions, big red flag. And this happens. This has happened to me. At the sprint review, you're seeing the demonstration of the work, and you're like, "What is that?" Right? I said ketchup, and you gave me mustard. How did that happen? Okay, that happens. Then, if it's a team that you've been through multiple releases with, you fought like 10 battles and 2 wars together, whatever, you played in 15 tournaments, and when they say they don't have questions, they're good. So it comes down to the feel of it. And I would challenge you, I would err on the side of challenging them if they're too quiet. I've been an awesome product owner. This new VP of engineering came in, and by the way, this is loosely based on true events in my experience. And the orders come down. Every product manager, product owner has to have 3-4 sprints worth of refined backlog ready to go, because we want to do CICD. Anybody know what CICD is? Continuous integration, continuous development, or something like that. Basically, like constant releases. And to be able to do constant releasing, and you're not talking about like major things, minor things, but constantly, you have to have your stuff together as an organization. It's got to be automated test scripts written, and like the QA function, the DevOps function. Everyone has to be in sync. It's like everyone's dreaming to say we're CI/CD, we're releasing constantly. Boom, 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 boom. So hard to do. But you certainly can't do it if you don't know what the heck the teams don't know what they're working on, right? And they're not ahead of the game in terms of planning, right? And I would say, well, come on, man. Do you know how many times I've heard that this is the priority, and then a day before our sprint planning, my boss will call me and tell me there's been a change in plans. I want to kick something. Because now I'm going to my team, and guess what I'm telling them? All that time we just spent refining our backlogs, chuck it in the trash. What do you think that, I'll put on, your search idea, great idea. It's a goner. Your voice idea, love it. Competition's not doing it, goner. Your idea, I forgot your idea.
That was mapping.
Mapping. See you later. How does that make you feel? Penelope, how are you feeling now?
I'm just angry, maybe.
You're pissed off.
Yeah.
And you know how you're feeling? I'm going to tell you how you're feeling. How are you feeling? Pissed off. Not only that, you think, what the heck do these people know? They got their heads in the sand. ROI, hit goals, customer satisfaction. That person thinks they can just come. I decide what the priorities are. So what the? I'm out of here. I'm taking the mic off. What's the point of my backlog? Why should I even care? right? This is what happens in the real world, right? People talk to you about this and they show you cool pictures, okay? And this is what happens in the real world. You get kicked in the, you did all this work. Here's what I'm here to tell you. You got to take it. The punches are going to come. You're going to get knocked down. That crap is going to happen to you. But never, ever, ever let that compromise how awesome you are at building, refining a backlog as a product owner and as a team. And the team can really suck at it at first, to be honest with you, right? They don't ask enough questions. They ask the wrong questions. They don't understand the business value. They don't realize the impact of us not doing this. They don't realize about, this is the goal, this is the little bit of wisdom I came here this evening to share with you. The reason your product backlog is so important is because of the relationship you have with your team. If you can't tell them and communicate with them, and interact with them so that there's an understanding of what it is that you would love to accomplish in this order of priorities that you've set, you have zero credibility, zero respect. Just what are you there for? Let the team decide what to do. Let the executive call them up, 5 minutes before the official start of the sprint and say, you're working on this, go, right? Now hopefully it happens less often than more often, and you are in a state of flow, and it's obvious why the product backlog is so critical. It's because of all these things. Like this is table stakes. The key, though, is that it never goes as planned. It never goes as you expect it. And quite frankly, the better you are at this, in the long run, the less often you'll get blindsided. And the more credibility you'll be able to stand up and say, you are not changing priorities on me. And I come to you, again, from experience, where I've put it out there for the team. And I've gone to my boss, and I've gone to a VP of engineering, and I've said, this is the third time you have, either cut this project or this feature set off at the knees and told us to start working on something else. Not anymore. You can't, what kind of productivity do you expect to get from your development team, right? So these are the kinds of things that, come with the turf, come with experience. But understanding that here's your backlog, and it's so well refined, yet, you can't always hold that in a bubble. But what you need to hold in the bubble is the practice and the intent of refinement, because it's about this. It's about the team. I've had developers come up to me and say, like, lost puppies, like, I don't understand why we're working on this. It's like sad to see, that's not what you want. You want developers coming to you and saying, we're working on this, and I just had an idea. I saw this demo of this natural language software, and I think and that's the other big point I want to make is that you're not making friends. You're not, it's not about like so much the social thing, but often your best ideas and the most business value comes from the team. And that's another talk. If any Amazonians here or people familiar with Amazon, if Amazon, I used to work at Amazon, they'll say, where do you get your, how do you build your backlog? Where do you get your ideas from? Users. Well, we talk to users. Or how else? That's it. Nothing more important than users. What the users want, we give them. Give me a break, man. What would Steve Jobs say? Users
They don't always know what they want.
Exactly. Users don't always know what they want. I'm going to build them this. They didn't know that this beautiful laptop, this is actually a Mac here, I want this I want this room to be exposed brick with one white wall to contrast. This room looks ugly. Well, you said you wanted brick and a white, but now that I see it, I think it's ugly. What do users, So I'm not saying users are insignificant, but what I am saying is if as a product manager or product owner, you don't spend the time with your team that you need to not only do the basics, you miss out on some of the best, most valuable, highest ROI ideas. You end up making beautiful music.